Hello, how's everyone doing today? I'm Daniel Rothschild, and I'm here with special guest Alex Radcliffe to talk about the most important thing in the world. No, not abortion, board games. Alex Radcliffe is the owner of the online store and YouTube channel Board Game Co., where he sells games and discusses games. And today we're going to talk about the top 10 overrated and the top 10 underrated board games, at least according to us. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Well, I guess before we go over our top 10 games, maybe tell us a little bit about your criterion, I guess, for what makes a game overrated or underrated. And then we'll just dive into it.
So, as a baseline, I tend to find the term overrated and underrated almost needs to come with the caveat that obviously this is my own opinion in comparison to the norm. I'm not never going to say a game is rated higher than it should be or lower than it should be. That's another way of saying that my opinion is right and everyone else is wrong, which is a very argumentative a take to have around board games, which should be fun, and that's about it. But for me, overrated and underrated just means exactly that. It means that my opinion differs from the norm to a reasonable enough degree that I think that game is rated higher than I would have thought it would be, and this game is rated lower than I would have thought it would be. Obviously, I'm wrong, but let's still talk about it.
Sure. Yeah, I think I would agree with you. When I composed my list, I also decided to not put on games that I think are just not at all games that I like. So, for example, I don't really like games that lack player interaction or cooperative games because I'm an individualist and I don't really like working with others. So those are not on my list. But why don't you start first, and we'll go back and forth, add some comments. For
Sure, do you want me to just jump straight into some of the games?
sure. Let's start with overrated first. So yeah,
Overrated. Not a problem. So starting off the bat with overrated, I'm going to go with the most currently overrated game in my opinion, a game that I thoroughly enjoy, own it, but I just don't understand how it shot up the rankings this high this fast, and that's going to be Ark Nova. Ark Nova is, I mean, it's currently, I believe, number five on Board Game Geek or somewhere that range. It went from basically nowhere to holy hell. This game is a contender for the top game of all time, and it just, to me, I like it. I enjoy it. It's a fun game, and that's kind of where my opinion caps out. And obviously, I'm wrong, which is part of the context I will not add to every single game, but is there. But people love it, and I'm merely okay with it.
right. Yeah. I have not played that game yet, so I can't really comment. But I guess my number 10 is a game that I don't hate it. I actually played it a few times. I enjoy it. But there are some problems that I have with it. And it's an economic game. It's rated very high. I think it's by many people considered to be the best economic game of all time, and that's Brass Birmingham.
Mm.
Uh, now, I've never played Brass Lancashire, so I cannot compare the two. Um, but the now there are many good things about this game. It's highly strategic. I think it's incredibly balanced. It rewards long term planning. But the main problem that I have with it myself is I think it's too long and I think it's too slow. And I think if the game were half the length, I would want to play it a lot more. But the game certainly on your first play round, it's double what the box says. This is a 3 to 4 hour game, and I just don't think it's worth that time investment. Personally, I would much rather play like Martin Wallace's Age of Steam or something than Brass in a 4 hours. I just think it's a little too long and slow.
So for me, Brass is a game that I do try to play specifically at three because of that aspect. But I absolutely adore the game. But I agree, 4 hours would be pushing it. I find three players who know the game, we can usually knock out a game in around 2.5 hours, which for me is a worthwhile payoff. Few games are worth 4 hours to me.
Right? Cool. All right, number 9.
My number nine is a game. If I should find my list over here, my number nine is a game that I've tried multiple times, and I keep trying it. And again, I keep enjoying it, but again, just doesn't I don't adore it. I merely enjoy it, and that's gonna be Great Western Trail. Great Western Trail is a game from I should know his name. Oh my gosh, Pfister. So what's his name? Pfister, whatever his name is.
Alexander
But
Fitzgerald. Yeah.
Alexander Pfister, thank you. But Great Western Trail is a game that I overall have really enjoyed the puzzle of the game. I've enjoyed the rondel mechanism of running around the track, of trying to score points, of building out your deck. But it's a game that at the same time, even as I enjoy those elements, I just find myself not pulled into the degree that other people have in this title. I like it, always happy to play it, but something about it, like I mean, for me, it's a solid contender for a good game, and that's where it caps out for me.
All right. Yeah, I'm meaning to play that one. I haven't played it yet, but I'll let you know if I agree with you. My number 9 is another economic game. Don't worry, I love economic games. And when I first played this game, it was actually my favorite game that I've ever played. I thought it was so unique and original, but I've cooled off on it considerably, and that is Food Shade Magnate. And there are a few problems that I have with this game. One, it's only fun if you're playing with people who've played the game before. It's not at all a fun experience if you're playing with people not on an equal skill level, because you know the outcome before you even start the game. It has such a butterfly effect that you know exactly what milestones are so overpowered and what to do. And if people who've played the game, they could stop you. But if you're playing with noobs, it's just not a fun experience. And to have a 2 hour learning game, I mean, this is a game that I refuse to teach. And I think it's only really fun if you play with people who've played before. Another problem that I have with Food Chain Magnate is I don't really think it has that many multiple paths to victory as it seems. It seems like, well, the milestone that allows you to market two goods instead of one, that's so clearly the best. The guru is so good that I think there's not that many different avenues. I think I think many of the openings are scripted. I think many of the avenues are sort of preset, and the game, the more I play it, the more it feels a little samey to me.
So I do agree to an extent that it can get samey over time. It's one of the reasons I do have the catch-up mechanism, which supposedly fixes that to a degree. I do think there are multiple pathways, but I don't know if I'd necessarily go with a ton of, nor with a single. It's a game that I thoroughly enjoy the cutthroat nature of it. Although I'll definitely give you the fact that 10 plays plus in, you will start to see certain patterns of more obvious pathways, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. All right.
My next one is going to be Scythe from Stonemaier Games. Scythe is a game that, again, common trend here. A lot of my games are in the top 100 or top 200 or so. Scythe is a game that I find is totally, totally okay. I love area control. I love the genre. And every time I play Scythe, I have a good time sitting down and moving my pieces around and leveling up my upgrades. And there's never a single wow moment in it for me. The entire game, as I go through it, is an exercise in optimization, but optimization that is your path is given to you because of the nature of the unique player boards that you have. There are a bunch of expansions. This could well be another one that expansions help it out for me. But as it stands, it's one that I enjoy, and that's about it.
Yeah, I was actually going to put this on my list, but now that you mention it, maybe I'll do another game because I think this is a Euro game that looks that it'll be a more area control than it is. I mean, the riverways are so combat's maybe 5% of the game. It's hard to do it anyway because of the river. And to me, I mean, this is a game that is everyone's just looking down at the board and just doing their own little personal puzzle, and you're not really interacting with people at all. And I don't really like any Jamie Stigmeyer games. I think Viticulture and Wingspan also have similar issues. Although I think Scythe, I would agree with you, is my least favorite. All right, now I think we're moving down, at least for me, games that I don't really like at all that much. This next game, for me, I would consider to be a cult game in the sense that anyone who doesn't like it, people say you're stupid or you're not playing it well enough or you just don't like it. And even if you played it 50 times, you have to play it 5,000 times and eventually you'll like it. And that is chess. And I'm not embarrassed and I'm not going to pretend that I like chess. And I like two-player abstracts. I have a bunch. The Gift series of two-player abstracts, those are really good. Go is a very old game, and that's very good. But I guess I'm not very good at chess. I know I'm going to lose every time I play it. And there's so many games I rather play and enjoy that I'm not just going to convince myself this game's going to be good, even though I've probably played it dozens and dozens of times.
Yeah, chess to me definitely falls into the category of being a classic to a degree, but not all classics have to be liked. While I adore chess, I find backgammon, for instance, I find very dull, and yet many people do enjoy both those games. Yeah. My number 8 or so, what 9, 10, I'm no past 8. Number 7 is Terra Mystica, continuing the trend of excellent games that were okay to me. I enjoyed Terra Mystica, dove into it multiple times. One of those games that I enjoyed it enough that I'm like, well, people love it, and so it clearly should be a game that I enjoy even more. And I just haven't. Multiple plays in, still have not enjoyed it more. I just merely enjoy it, and it's one that I find that I do have Gaia Project. I haven't played Gaia Project. I'm looking forward to trying it out, but since it's built on the same foundational system, I wonder which will be for me or not.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I've not played that one yet, but Yeah, I've heard mixed things. I guess we need to play more games. All right, my next game on the list is a game that's very highly regarded. I think it's incredibly dated today, and it also, to me, also does have a fair bit amount of luck. So I don't even know why so many people like rave against this game and consider it like the gateway game when a lot of it's just dice rolling, and that is Settlers of Catan. Um, my sister likes this game. She wins every time, so maybe there's less luck than I think there is. But I think there are so many other games that does what Settler does well. I think it's very much a product of its time, and I think time to move on.
Yeah, Catan I think definitely holds up as being an incredible game for what it did. But I agree to an extent that it's a good game. It's a game that I think better games have replaced it, but it certainly can be iconic. To me, it's the game Monopoly should have been, if that makes sense. The game that manages to hold a place. It's just a question of where and how.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
number six is going to be Aeon's End, the deck builder that I enjoy, but have never quite found the degree of love for it that many have. To me, there are so many deck builders out there, so many possibilities, so many options out there that are just absolutely incredible. And Aeon's End to me was good, and yet somehow it's one of the best rated, if not the best rated deck builder out there. I just don't find the system at play to be quite as compelling or engaging as other games out there. And yet, again, I enjoy it, but I'd much rather play a game of Dominion or Star Realms or Shards of Infinity or Quest for Eldorado or insert a dozen other deck builders.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Cool. My next one on the list is this is a game that's actually not highly regarded, but it's very economically successful. So I think it should go on the list anyway, because even if it's a game that I guess serious gamers hate, it's had a lot of spin-offs, and I really don't understand it. And I think this is the only game that I've played where in the middle, the person teaching me the game, I said, "Can we please stop playing?" And I'm usually a good sport. I will sit through a game even if I don't like it to the bitter end. But this game felt interminable and was just not at all enjoyable. And that's Munchkin. And okay, I guess it has cute cards, but as a game, yeah, no,
Yeah, Munchkin is one that definitely is loves to be hated on to a degree. I played it one time, and that one time was enough.
yeah,
For me, my number five is going to be Raiders of the North Sea, and for this one, I actually had to pick which one of the Garphill Games trilogy I go with. Raiders, Paladins, Raider, Paladins, and Architects are all games that I've enjoyed, but don't quite love the way other people love them. And so Raiders is the one that I picked ultimately for the game that I would select as being overrated. And it's one that I think it's okay. I think this simple mechanism at play is a little too simple in terms of what it's doing, and it's a game that I think is a solid game, a solid seven, a solid totally okay, and just something about it has captured people's attention in a way that just outpaces where I am at with the game.
nice. Any games we're gonna have that you hate yet?
From one of the ones you mentioned, I mean, the only one you
Oh,
mentioned that I
oh,
hate is Munchkin. I mean, for me, I don't
oh,
know if there's any. There's two on my list.
all
No,
right.
three.
Well,
There's three on my list that we're gonna get to at the low end of there that I actively would not want to play. The rest of them are games that I enjoy. They're just overrated to me.
yes, very nice. Yeah. The next game on this list has inspired so many spin-offs, and it's a lazy person's game, and it's not really even a game. And I don't know if people even really like it today, but it is. A lot of people still, I think, play it, and it's they're just better versions of it. And that's apples to apples. Why play that game when Dixit exists? I mean, I just don't think there's a reason to. Dixit does similar. Some is a very similar game in terms of what Apples claims to does, but I think is actually has some skill. To me, Apples to Apples just feels completely random. I don't even think the cards are particularly funny, and I think it's just more about knowing what you think people are going to vote on than and knowing the other person. So it's barely really even a game to me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I find that to me, Dixit, like you said already, captures that genre a little better. Apples to Apples, like Cards Against Humanity for that matter, I find is more about just whatever's gonna be funniest and not really worrying about the rest of it. But I enjoy the game without it being quite an amazing game.
Right.
But for me, my number 4 is the first of the games that I would actively not want to play, which is Alchemist. Alchemist is an app-based game of deduction, and while I love deduction games and while I love Euro games, I find Alchemist kind of gives me the worst of both. It is neither a Euro game that I particularly enjoy, nor is a deduction game I particularly enjoy. It just draws out the deductive process in a game that has beautiful art, and that's kind of where the puzzle caps out for me. I think it's a good theoretical system, and I'd rather play other simpler deduction games instead.
Yeah, I haven't played it yet, but it looks incredibly. It looks more convoluted and bloated than I think it needs to be. At least that's sort of my assumption. But yeah, the next game on my list, I really don't even sort of understand how people like this game, but I guess it has its fan. To me, I consider this sort of the adult version of Candyland. Pick a card, go where it says, and you don't really have any agency at all. And I guess it has a cool theme, but as a game, it's just really not fun. And that's Betrayal at House on the Hill. I
Hmm.
mean, I I feel like there's really no player agency. I sort of like it when I die, so at least I don't have to play the game anymore. And I've only played it once, but I really don't have an urge to play this game again. I think it's too long. I don't think it gives you much choices, and yeah. But
I
based on your
mean,
reaction, I think we
I
disagree.
think no. I completely agree. Candyland gives you zero choices, not much choices. There's zero agency in the whole entire game. So I find and worse than that, it has the theoretical possibility, albeit not likely, but the theoretical possibility for it to go on for an infinite amount of time, which makes it not the best game. But yeah, not one that I overall would pick in terms of playing. In terms of your list, you're
Oh,
fine.
I'm Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Oh, sorry. Oh my gosh, you said Candyland. I just mentally
Okay,
pivoted to
well,
Candyland.
it kind of feels
I'm
like
so sorry.
Candy.
I'm so sorry. Trailhouse on the Hill is one that I have not played. I think it's the first game you mentioned I haven't played.
Oh, you're not missing much.
Yeah.
You're not
Sorry, you
missing.
said Candyland early on. I was like, oh, Candyland, and I
Oh, no.
completely pivoted away
No,
from
I
that.
don't like that game. I wouldn't put that on my list.
Yeah.
That game feels like Candyland to me. It gives you no choices. Yes.
Gotcha. For me, number 3 is Jaipur, which I actually really enjoy, but it's in the Board Game Geek top 200, which I'm shocked by. It's a light trading card game, which has a degree of just playing cards back and forth, trying to collect sets, and trying to time your set collection over your opponents. It's a fun little system, but it's just one that I'm shocked is in the Board Game Geek top 200. It may even be higher, maybe top 100. I don't know, but it's one that it's a good game. I'm surprised it's rated that high.
Yeah. I've not played a lot of your games, I guess, I must confess, but that was one I was looking forward to, but we'll see. Um, the next game, on what number are we up to? Let's see.
A number 3 for you, I believe.
I think three, right? So the next game on my list is a game which not only do I not like, but I thought I was missing something, and I've introduced this game to a bunch of different people because I wanted to give it a chance, and no one I've played it with likes it. But it is, highly regarded, and it's a bluffing game. And I love bluffing games. Cockroach Poker is one of my favorite games of all time. I love bluffing games. And this game can be played with a deck of cards, which is how I taught it to people. And the game just seems totally random to me and just sort of like, I guess you like it if you're drunk, but doesn't really seem that fun. And that's Skull. And, like, I don't know. I mean, there's not really much to the game. It's easy, I guess. But I just don't find it a fun experience. And I played it with a bunch of people, and no one that I played it with thought it was a fun experience.
So bluffing games are a category I definitely enjoy. I love Cockroach Poker. I love Skull.
Yeah.
I will say Cockroach Poker has primarily replaced Skull as my go-to quick bluffing game. But I've gone through them all from Coup to Cockroach Poker to Skull to any number. Sheriff of Nottingham is always a blast. I do enjoy Skull, but I will also say that Cockroach Poker has replaced it for me.
Yeah.
For me, my number 2 is the second, and these last two are games that I actively prefer not to play. But my number 2 is Unmatched, the entire series of Unmatched. I find that Unmatched is just a game system in which you are playing the obvious card to move closer to your opponent and then hit your opponent. And then once you close the distance, it's just play card, play card, play card based on the deck you have. Is there possible nuance to it? Maybe in other characters, but the base game didn't seem to give me any real nuance. I felt like there's this very complex interactive map that really comes down to just play the card to close the gap, hit your opponent, play the card to close the gap, hit your opponent, hope you have a better hand at the right time. I am baffled that people enjoy this game. Again, I recognize I'm in the minority here, but I'm just baffled.
Yeah. So I guess that game doesn't give you a lot of agency, you're saying.
I don't feel the agency when I play the game.
Right. Nice. All right. So I guess this is number two for me. I guess my number 2 on the list um, would be a social deduction game. And I've played this game 3 times, so I feel like I've given it a shot. But I feel like the outcome is the same because I feel like the murderer wins every time. And that's Deception Murder in Hong Kong. I think the clues are so broad that I really don't understand how people even get them. And I feel it's way too easy for the murderer. And I feel when people do get them, you don't really understand even the process of how they got there. You know, I like social deduction games like the Resistance Avalon, where you actually have some deduction and logic that you can use. But I don't really like the werewolf type games where you feel like there's not really a lot of deduction and a lot of it just comes down to, you know, intuition or guesswork or stuff like that. So a lot of people like Deception and Murder in Hong Kong, but I don't really get the love.
I enjoy it, but I've only played it once or twice, so I can't overly comment on it. It's one that I found that there are other hidden role games I typically prefer over my 2 or 3 plays of the game. But yeah,
Cool.
yep. I will say there was one time with Deception and Murder in Hong Kong. There was one time where my brother left the room, and he was the one who was he left the room briefly to take a call, and we all kind of just grabbed one card, and we kind of I can't remember the exact situation, but we kind of picked a target clue and then pretended as if we would actually like figure it out, and then we walked back in, and the person gave a bizarre clue, and immediately like was like, "Oh, it's him," and there was just to throw him off, and he was so confused. It was one of the better moments I've had in gaming, but it had nothing to do with the actual game being good. In any case, my number one is a system that is better than Unmatched, better than Alchemist, but still one I'd actively seek to not play, which is anything in the legend. I shouldn't say anything. I was gonna say let's go with Legendary Marvel. I was about to say anything in the Legendary catalog, but they actually have a bunch of different games, and I haven't played them all, and I've heard that they are different, so I shouldn't say that. I'll just go with Legendary Marvel as being a deck building game that is a superhero based deck building game. I'd rather play Sentinels in the Multiverse. I'd rather play Marvel Champions. I'd rather play a dozen other games or any deck building games that aren't superhero based. I find Marvel Champions to be a little too just very very simple and has a semi co-op element that kind of just makes it feel like you are or are not working together with no real degree of certainty. And so yeah, I'm okay with Legendary, but not one that I particularly want to play.
Right. Nice. Yeah. So my number 1, it's not the worst game on this list, but it's probably the one I was the most disappointed by, and it's got a lot of love. I do have a feeling you'll probably disagree with my pick. Um, and I was really looking forward to playing this game because it has a lot of elements that I like. It has area control, it has negotiation, it has diplomacy, um, and that is Twilight Imperium 4th Edition. Now, the problem that I have now, I played this game 1.5 times in a sense. So there's this place near me called Boards and Brews. They have thousands of board games. You go in there for $5. You can play games as long as you want. And I went in there and I said, "Do you know anyone who plays Twilight Imperium? Because I've heard about this game, but none of my friends are going to commit to an 8-hour game. They're just not going to do that. But I will." And he's like, "That's my favorite game. Give me your contact info." They play it here about once a month. And we played only up till the first 5 objectives. And it lasted 2.5 hours. We played half a game. And for the 2.5 hours, I'm like, this is kind of fun. I don't really like that combat is determined by dice rolling. But other than that, I thought it was a fun, game for 2.5 hours. And then I played the full version, which lasted about 7.5 hours. And I really did not like it. Because one, I don't think it respects its players' time. I mean, I don't mind randomness in games, but not in a game that takes all day to play. I just don't really think that's acceptable. And too many times I've seen it where a person is doing really, really well. They get into 1 or 2 combats and they're totally just decimated. And that really is the main area of the game that has luck. But because it's pretty much area control, combat seems like it's unavoidable. Another problem that I had, and this was my playthrough of the game, and you could say maybe this was just the player's fault, but the game allowed it, and that is near the end, a guy who knew he could not win just handed the win over to someone else. There were like 2 other or 3 other people who were close, and he just made a deal that would not benefit him, but would benefit someone else just so the game would be over after 7 hours, because I guess he was tired of playing it. And I just think this game just tries to do everything and throw everything at the kitchen sink. And I believe in the division of labor. do one thing, do that well, and this just tries to be, a jack of all trades and a master of none. It tries to throw everything at the board, hoping some of it will stick instead of just specializing and doing it well. But your thought?
I have not played Twilight Imperium yet. I do have a game session of it scheduled in like 2 or 3 months, so I can touch base with you then. Let you know how that goes.
Sure.
I will say my default expectation off the bat, though, is that any game that asks a lot of time, it has a higher standard for me, both in terms of just asking for a lot of time, but also in the sense that anything that goes wrong in the game can really hurt the experience. If I'm playing a game of One Night Ultimate Werewolf and it doesn't work out as expected, well, great, I lost 8 minutes. If I'm playing a 4-hour game, I've lost 4 hours. So there's always that balance, and the longer a game is, the more risk there is as far as how well it will do.
Nice. All right, that was so far quicker than expected. Ready to do some underrated? I'm looking forward to this. We'll end on a positive note.
Ooh, underrated. Underrated is going to be a fun list. Like you said, much more positive note. But in this one, I actually even took the time and the energy to catalog the ratings on Board Game Geek of the games I go through them. And I guess I'll start off with those. I'll see if I go through them in order of most to least rated or whatnot. But number 10 for me is Aquatica, coming in at 7.4 on Board Game Geek, and a game that I absolutely adore. I find Aquatica gives you a quick card selection mechanism with many opportunities to feel clever, and I just really enjoy the system. Aquatica is a fantastic game that I always enjoy playing. I do play with the expansion though, so that's my go-to.
Oh, nice. Yes, I'll check it out. My game is a social deduction game. It's by the guy who made Air, Land, and Sea, and it's a phenomenal game called Scapegoat. Now, this game is super quick. It plays in like 10, 15 minutes. And it's a very interesting game because it's basically a one versus many where people have committed a robbery and you're trying to frame one of the players to be the fall guy. And the scapegoat wins. Well, whoever goes to the police, the scapegoat automatically wins. If that's the scapegoat, good for the scapegoat. If not, and you were just paranoid and thought you were the scapegoat, you lost for your team. And the other team wins if they correctly frame the scapegoat by basically every person is a different color goat. And if everyone has that card of that color and throws it in at the same time when it's time for a frame up, and everyone but the one who's a scapegoat doesn't have to show it, that team wins. And this creates an excellent sense of paranoia. You basically have a grid in the back of your card that shows you that you roll dice, and it shows you on that number grid who the scapegoat is. Now, everyone but one person is told a same color who the scapegoat is, but the scapegoat is told a different color. So you don't know who your own role is. You don't know if this game is lying to you. So this is a game where you sort of think you know who other people is, but you don't even know yourself. And I think it's just a very fast, very brilliant twist on the social deduction premise. Yeah.
Very cool. My number 9 is let's see, rating this in order is Deus. Deus is a game that comes in at 7.29 on Board Game Geek, and it's one that I've always enjoyed the cascading mechanism of the cards. It's a Euro game which you're playing cards to a tableau, and every time you play a card, you take more actions at that tableau. So the card is progressively what you're doing in the game progressively increases as you go through it. I've always found this to be surprisingly compelling and simple at the same time. A game that is both beautiful to look at and just engaging to play as you dive deeper into hands of cards and try to figure out the best system forward in the game. Overall, enjoyed. It's a solid game that has an expansion I sadly never played, but great game.
Very nice. Cool. The next game on my list is, I guess there's two titles or they're re-implementations. This is a Stefan Feld game. I think it's the only Stefan Feld game that I've played, to my knowledge, and has a ton of interaction. I think one of the reasons I've sort of avoided his games is because I've heard his games are low on that front. But this game has a ton of interaction, and that's either Jorvik or the Splendor Schlatt, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but this is an auction game where has a very interesting auction where you sort of want to get sort of resources, but you also can bid on things you don't even want just to sort of make it more expensive for someone else. And it's sort of a mean auction game with tons of interaction and very simple rules and a lot of interaction. And I just thought it was a very enjoyable experience. Yeah. Have you played that?
Sadly, I haven't, although I do have some Stefan Feld games we're going to get to shortly.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but no, I have not. So I've played a lot of Stefan Feld games in general, and I haven't played that one sadly. But
Right.
most of his games I've actually tabled by now. And in
Yeah.
fact, when I say shortly, I think shortly actually means right now. Coming in at another 7.29, we have the Oracle of Delphi from Stefan Feld. I really like the Oracle of Delphi. While it's not my favorite game from him, it's probably like fourth or fifth down the list, and I really enjoy it. And I'm surprised it's ranked as low as it is. It's a very interesting mechanism of his usual point salad, but combined with a more of a pick up and deliver and racing around the board in different ways, along with abstracted combat. I really enjoy it. It's a little different from his usual stuff, which I think is why it's a little lower rated, but it's a solid Stefan Feld game to me.
Nice. So this game, I think, in my view, is probably the best gateway game, and I think it's rated in the 500. So maybe it's somewhat high on Board Game Geek, but it is out of print. So I thought it should go on this list. And this blows Ticket to Ride out of the water. It's made by the same guy, and that's Airlines Europe. Airlines Europe is a great stock market game, dirt simple rules. There's a little bit of luck, but it's really not that decisive. Tons of player interaction. It's really good. I'm going to sort of cheat and put Chicago Express as a two-parter, but I think both of those are just excellent choices if you want like very crunchy economic games. But Airlines Europe is just, I think, a very phenomenal little game. Yeah.
That's a great one. I've been a long time since I played it, but overall enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Then for me, my number 6, I guess, 7, a 10, 9, 8, 7. My number 7 comes in at 7.27, and that's going to be Quad Heroes. Quad Heroes, which is actually active on Kickstarter at the moment, but it's one in which the Quad Heroes gives you a puzzle of tumbling things around the board in a way that is incredibly compelling to try to take advantage of different puzzle opportunities in front of you. You're going to have various tokens, various abilities, various character abilities, various things you can activate, cards you can play, and they're all designed to give you that little bit of a puzzle of how are you going to get to the objectives faster and better than your opponents, although there's also solo and co-op scenarios as well. I really enjoy Quad Heroes. It's both visually delightful as well as just such a fun puzzle of an experience. It's one that's a little harder to table, a lot going on in the box, but I really, really love the game.
Nice. So is a new version on Kickstarter, or this is
There's
like
a second edition currently on Kickstarter, yes.
Very nice. So the next game, which if Alex has not played it, I highly recommend buying it because this is a great game. It sort of has a party feel game, but it creates lots of discussion. It encourages creativity. I think it's a great game for children and families, and I just think it's a wonderful game. And it's Zendo. Now, Zendo is you have a rule in your head. Now, there are sort of cards to prompt you, but you're not limited by those cards. You have a rule in your head concerning numbers or colors or shapes, and you make two structures, one of which follows the rule, the other one which does not follow the rule. And people have to build structures and try to figure out the rule that's in the moderator's head. And if they guess incorrectly, the moderator has to prove them why their guess was wrong. And they win either by guessing the rule correctly or being unable to provide a counter. And I think it's just a very fun way to teach people about the scientific method. And it's just a wonderful little game.
Yeah, I've heard of Zenda before. I haven't played it, but I know the mechanism of the following the rule aspect. That's a clever little word game that's been played as well in general. But yeah, Zendo is one that I definitely would love to table at some point.
Yeah, highly recommend.
For me, my next one is going to be a 7.24 on Board Game Geek, and it's one of my favorite worker placement games. Just enough cutthroatness to be a little bit aggressive while also not actually being that take that, so that you can recover quickly. And it's Carson City. Carson City is a worker placement game of placing out your cowboys on the map and then occasionally getting into conflicts because you can go when another person goes, but when you do so, you actually have to engage in combat, which also leads to this backwards aspect of trying to take advantage of loading up your posse, grabbing extra guns, all those things before you settle into this worker placement phase. I really enjoy the cutthroat nature of it. I really enjoy the building out your town. I really enjoy the building and rotating of your buildings as you level up and get more and more powerful in the game. It's one of my favorite worker placement games and always a delight to play.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard it has more interaction than most, I guess, worker placement.
It has a lot, yes.
That and Argent, I think, are the two on my list that I sort of want to check out.
Argent I never tabled, sadly.
No, I've never played it, but I've heard also good things about that. All right, I think the next one on my list is my favorite pure auction game. My favorite game of all time has auctions, and that will be on this list, but my favorite pure auction game. And this is a game with basically shared alliances and Some people have accused the game of king making or randomness, but I just don't think they know how to play it well. Play it with me, and I'll whoop you. And I think this game is phenomenal. And that is The Estates. The Estates
Ooh.
is an excellent auction game, and it's really a lot of fun. It plays very, very quickly. It's really, and it involves a lot of mind games. And I think, if you like mind games and playing mind games with people, I think you'll like The Estates. It's really, really good. Yeah.
Yeah, the Estates is a great game. I played it a few times. It's one that I don't have in my collection currently, but I overall enjoyed the puzzle. Overall enjoyed the bidding and the cutthroat nature of what the game is offering.
Yeah.
Yep. For me, my number four is five. Five. My number five is going to be Wild Ascent, coming in at 7.2 on Board Game Geek. It's a game that for some reason, and I think it's the rulebook. I think it has to be the rulebook because I don't see another way around it. But it's to me, Wild Ascent is an incredible monster hunting game. You play as four seekers trying to run around the board, trying to hunt and or kill monsters. Hunting them is going to get you more coin, but takes more work, effort, and energy. Killing them is a little easier and is going to be essential to actually surviving at times. And the puzzle and the combination of abilities and the high degree of variability in the experience just makes me absolutely adore the Wild Ascent experience. It's a 10 mission campaign game that gives you just enough campaign that you can actually dive into and complete it while not being, so much that you can't actually table it ever. I really enjoy the puzzle of it, and it's a game that I don't understand why it's not rated higher unless it comes down to the rulebook, which granted is very, very bad.
Nice. Yeah. I think I'll also look at the ratings. I think this one is the rating is, I think, the least at a 6.8. But I think this game is really, really good. It's the only game I've played by the designer, but after playing it, I think I want to play more. And it's another game of shared incentives, and it's an abstract, but it's really a lot of fun. It's super clever. There's no luck, and that is The Bridges of Shangri-La. The
Hmm.
Bridges of Shangri-La. I think it's out of print, but you can probably get a copy for like $30. I don't think it's particularly expensive. And it's basically a game that involves leeching off of other players' efforts. And it's basically a game where you have these different images that you place on a matching images on the board, and you get to travel to towns. And once you travel to towns, like a bridge gets removed off the board, and and that's how you place masters on top of students, and you can move other pieces away. If the town you're going to has more, you displace others. If the town you're going to has less, you get displaced, but it might still be worth doing so just to stop them from going to you at that moment. And it's just a very thinky, very interactive game with a lot of shared incentives. And I happen to love shared incentives in games, where games it seems like you're working with people, but you're really just competing with them. Yeah, excellent game.
Have not played that one, sadly. Heard about it, seen it over the years, never actually tabled it.
Yeah.
For me, my number four, coming in at 7.13, is Circle the Wagons from Buttonshy Games. Circle the Wagons is a fast, quick card game that is a delightful drafting aspect of trying to gather the cards you need to build out your own tableau while being mindful of the fact that your opponent wants cards too, and you're all going for the same scoring goals, but every time you skip over cards, you're giving those cards to your opponent. So you can always take whatever you want, but inherently, you're going to be giving your opponent whatever you skip. So there's a little bit of a trade-off of taking the right thing versus taking the more things versus taking the right thing. And I enjoy the puzzle of it very, very much. And the cards all have different scoring goals in the back, which means it's high variability along the way. I really enjoy that one.
Nice. So I'm sort of cheating because I don't think this game is released in North America yet. I had to get a copy from Britain, but when it gets released, it will probably be overrated. And I had to pick a Reiner Knizia game because I love Reiner Knizia when he does games well. Dirt simple rules. And I originally bought this game because a lot of people compared it to Witchstone, which I quite loved. Although I don't feel it plays like Witchstone, and that game is Millefiori. This game actually plays a lot like Babylonia, so I think if you like Babylonia, you will like Millefiori. But it's just a very excellent game. It's incredibly balanced, and it's a game that has way more player interaction than Witchstone. I mean, Witchstone's a great game, but I think this is just a very good game about just accruing points and stopping other people and leeching off of other people like Babylonia. And it sort of has a feeling of area control in a sense. And I just think is a really good game, worth getting your hands on when I think it gets released here. Yeah.
Sadly, have not played it. Sadly, have not. For me, my number three is going to be Sheriff of Nottingham, which is coming in at a 7.11 at Board Game Geek on Board Game Geek, and it's one that has. Speaking of bluffing, we actually referenced it earlier in this list. I love the bluffing in Sheriff of Nottingham. I find it to be such a fun game of trying to outmatch your opponent in terms of the bluff, what you're willing to pay, what you're not willing to pay, as you try to smuggle goods into the city. As players take turns playing as a sheriff, trying to decide when and where to open up your bag, and you try to both pay them and not pay them based on whatever way you think you can mess with their heads. It is such an enjoyable experience as far as the degree of bluffing interaction. A little longer than I'd like for my typical bluffing game, but still one that I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's a very good pick. I'm not particularly good at this game. I lose often. But although I think sort of the strategy of the game is to offer nothing when you have stuff, so they and scare them and outwit them that way, and then I'll pay money when you're telling the truth. But I think it's a very good pick. I like it a lot. I think they just did a second edition. From what I've heard, everyone prefers the first edition more. But yeah, good pick. Very good game. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll mention Cockroach Poker on this list. Although I think that is well regarded, so I don't know if it's considered underrated.
No, it's rated pretty low as far as I believe.
We'll put that on. Get the Royal version. It's just better in every way. It gives more options.
I completely agree.
That's the version I would get. Everyone I've played this with loves this game. I haven't found a single. Even my sister, who doesn't even like bluffing games, has enjoyed it. One of my sisters. Kids love it. It produces hounds of laughter, and it has way more strategy than I think people give it credit for, especially with that penalty deck in the Royal version. I think that game has way more strategy than it seems. Very good game. Yeah.
I believe it's to you. I think.
No, I just went. Cockroach Poker.
I thought you were playing. I'm my bad. I thought you were playing off of my choice. I thought you were adding it as a conversational piece. I didn't realize it was the choice.
Yeah, we could.
No. So number two for me is Antique Duellum. Antique Duellum is a two-player war game, a two-player area control game that I find two-player area control games don't typically work that well, but in the case of Antique Duellum, I find it works brilliantly. It utilizes a mechanism, a rondel mechanism, as you try to take your actions, moving your tokens around the board, and you try to be figuring out where to optimize around your engine, where to optimize around your resource production, while also being mindful of creating troops and sending them your opponent's way. I love it, and it balances so nicely at two players. Players always going back and forth, taking the edge as they vie towards 9 victory points. Overall, really enjoy this one. There's another version of it called Antique in general, which is a larger player count version that I do like, but I find that I always play the two-player version and choose other games at higher player counts.
I was debating putting this game on the list because I think it's somewhat rated well, but I've so far I think just played it once, but I was blown away, and I thought this game I had very low expectations because I thought it would be way too random. But in my view, this game is better than it has any right to be, and that is Camel Up. Camel Up is just a very fun, and it feels like you're at the racetrack. It does a very good job feeling like you're gambling, and I think there is strategy and hedging your bets and cleverness, and it's just a very good party game to play with a large crowd. And I think, much better than I thought it would be. I think it's just a very good party game, yeah.
Yeah, solid. Sadly, I've never gotten a chance to play Camel Up. I've actually read the rules. I know how the game plays. I just never ended up tabling at the end of the day. For me, my number one is it should be higher. It just should be higher. It's coming in at 7.05 on Board Game Geek. City of Spies is a game that I absolutely adore. City of Spies has a degree of bluffing as you try to figure out how and where to place your almost worker placement to a degree, but not totally. But you're going to be placing your spies down in different areas, trying to vie for the rewards in those areas, but very often you're placing your spies face down. And so there's a constant bluffing element of the timing and the locations and how to take the right abilities, and then also being able to look at adjacent areas because depending on where you place, you get secret information. It's a constant bluffing back and forth as you try to think through what your opponent would or would not have played based on the tiles on the map and based on the cards in play in order to try to figure out in order to anticipate their move and outplay them. I find it to be such an excellent game as far as the combination of bluffing, the combination of reading your opponents, and then just the tactical strategy of the game. I adore City of Spies.
Nice. Yeah, I'll check it out. My number one game is actually my favorite game of all time, and this is an economic game, so I do like them. This game is sadly out of print, and you have to play this game, Alex. I think if you like brass, you'll like this game. This game blows me away, and there's no luck, but it plays differently every single time, and you really get a sense of people's personality when playing the game. You really reveal human nature when playing the game, and this game is amazing, and that is Container. Container is such, even at $200, I which is what I which is probably its price point now. I think it's worth obtaining. I mean, it is completely determined by the players. It can even create a boom bust cycle. The only way money it enters the game is through the government subsidy when winning auctions. The supply, the demand is completely determined by the players. There are some people who said the game's dry, but I really don't see it. It really feels like you're running a shipping company, and it is incredibly interactive. Some people say that the win condition is a little obtuse or obscure, but to me, that's half the fun. And it rewards repeated plays and is just incredibly engaged, a 2-hour incredibly engaging game. And it's the game that I think I wanted Brass to be, but Container is just a phenomenal economic game with lots of player agency and choice. Yeah.
I've heard good things about Container. My friend, the Jesse Quacklip, has actually recently played it and really enjoyed it. I sadly never got to table that one. It's that one that's definitely highly on my radar. I know there's like a 10th anniversary giant box edition. I'd love to play it, just haven't gotten to it yet.
Yes. Well, if you want to come to New Hampshire. Excellent game. Yeah. Cool. Yes, I think maybe we can. Well, I think we have a little time. Maybe we could cheat a little, but yeah. So I think those are most of our games that we did. That was a good discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really appreciate this. I really enjoyed this. There's lots of games out there that are both. There are lots of games that are a fit for the right person. There's lots of games that'll match up to our opinions, our tastes in different ways. And then there's always those games that we just don't understand why somebody else loves them quite as much. And then those games that we love them and we don't understand why others don't quite as much. This is a good selection of a large variety of those games in these categories. There's 20 games here. 20 games, like barely any overlap. Arguably close to overlap with Scythe. I definitely agree with you on Cockroach Poker. It didn't make my list, but it definitely would be an underrated game for me. I think it's not nearly as well weighted as it should be. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, there were a few games that I was there are some games where I understand why people don't like. I love Diplomacy, but I totally understand why someone wouldn't. So I do get that. Yeah, but it was a good discussion. I also thought, although it's highly rated, so maybe I shouldn't have put it on my list, but I also thought of putting Hanamakoji on my underrated
Oh,
list.
such a great game. Hanamakoji is excellent. I actually just played Geisha's Road for the first time. Really like that one.
Oh, is that similar? Yeah.
Hanamakoji Geisha's Road is the most recent version of the game. They put out a new version that I believe is arriving to backers shortly, and I had the opportunity to just play it like 2 weeks ago, basically. But the designer or one of the people in the company visited Cleveland, dropped by, and we played Geisha's Road. It's the same I cut you choose mechanism with a different way of how you score. I don't think it's better or worse. I think it's different, and if you like Hanamakoji, you'll probably like this one.
Nice. Yeah, I'll check it out because I just thought that was that to me, that game, I remember playing that game like 10 times in a row, which only takes an hour because the games are super short. But that game is way more than meets the eye, I think, in that game. Yeah, it's just very, very, very clever game. Yeah.
Oh, it's absolutely excellent.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. Cool. Well, I don't know if you want to talk about anything else, but that was a good discussion.
This is great. I really appreciate you having me on. This is awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Anytime. Well, I'm down to do it again. That was fun.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Daniel.
Sure. I'll send you the link if you want. You could post it on your channel or whatever.
Absolutely. Please do.
All right. Take it easy. Good game.
Thank you.
Bye.